Not being seen to be doing something doesn't mean you're not doing anything. I don't mind mess. You expect them to live with a bit of chaos. I went there at a time of massive issues. It's a good business case. It's a case study of everything went wrong. You turn it around in a couple of years' time. There's nothing that does better than practice. You don't always talk first, you observe. A lot of the work that I do is behind the scenes. When I came to aged care, I thought, this is backward. People can make an informed decision given the information. 9 out of 10 people want to age at home, but only about 9% are prepared. People from the Indian, Chinese and Filipino and South African communities, Australia would be stuffed. We wouldn't have the nurses, we wouldn't have the care staff. They talked about there needed to be 10,600 new beds for the next 20 years, and last year I think only 800 were built.
Before we get started, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode of our cutting-edge contemporary conversations. Thank you. Welcome, Sandra. How are you?
I am fine and dandy.
Fine and dandy. Thank you for your time this morning. It's a lovely day today. Could you give us a brief background of yours and your story and your falling into leadership?
Wow, okay. I fell into leadership early.
Mm-hmm.
I started my life off as a nurse, and there was really only a few pathways in nursing, and there still is, although many nurses don't continue on with their practice certificate and becoming a nurse. So, you know, it's education, research, clinical care, which is what most nurses do, or management, leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So probably my first leadership was I moved out of the acute health system and I moved into I was working in the area of disability. And I worked at the what used to be the old children's hospital. It's no longer there, and it was turned into a facility for people with the most severe intellectual and physical disabilities. It was called St Nicholas Hospital in Carlton. And that's where I found myself. And my very first leadership role was actually, the government had decided that it was at the very start of the closing down of the institutions, and they decided that they would close St Nicholas and close a number of other institutions, which they did, and put people into what's called community residential units, and they're still in existence today in these group homes of 5 or 6 people. And the unions were getting quite active, and at that stage it was a Labor government, and the unions were quite supportive, providing certain things were met. Anyhow, I'd always been a member of the union, but not active. And I found myself, it was one of those jobs where only somebody who didn't know what they were getting into would be getting. And so I was 23, you know, and I'm standing there, and they were calling for what was then called it was a shop steward, but it was, you know, and this was like the health services union, whatever they were called then. And there were not very many women in the union movement, and most of them didn't look like me. And so I thought, I could have a go at that. And so I looked behind me, and everybody was like standing back and literally pushing me forward, and I just went, okay, I'll do this. It was an interesting time. I probably wouldn't have done it if it hadn't have been, because I believed in the closing of the institutions. I believed in moving these people out into the community. So if I hadn't have thought we were working on something that was going to be useful and helpful and something that was needed, I wouldn't have done it. But that was interesting. I did a whole lot of training. I found the union movement's changed now, and I could talk about that forever. I think sometimes they get more in the way than they do helpful, because we have to change the way we think with models with staffing models, and I don't think that's not where they're going. But that was my first leadership role, and then I kind of continued after that. You know, you get a few runs on the board. My first CEO role, I was like 25, 26, and that was in a disability agency that provided residential respite services. It did a whole lot of training for family members in looking after their child who had a disability. And I was in that role for about 5.5 years. And then I moved into, so I basically did the nursing, and then I did a psychology degree, and that took me like 5 years. I've always worked and studied at the same time.
Yeah.
Always. And that took me back into state government. So I worked for state government for quite a long time, Health Commission, Health and Human Services, whatever it was called. And I actually ended up working a lot in the eastern region of Melbourne. And I did just about every program. I didn't just stick to disability. I actually worked in family, youth and children's services, juvenile justice. I found, this is where you have to learn about your prejudices. I found that my husband and I hadn't been able to have children. He had a condition which precluded him from that. And when you start judging people because they've got children and they can't even look after them, then you go, you're a professional, you need to get out and not work in that area. Yeah. So a lot of them don't do that. They don't notice it, or they do. So I didn't go back into children's services, juvenile justice again. But there was other areas such as primary care. But I stayed in the disability area. I was at a management level for quite a while, doing different things, lots of projects. I went to Kew Cottages for a while and did a whole lot of research projects there. But I never went back into face-to-face nursing. And by that stage, I was a qualified psychologist. And that is when I actually decided that I would move into local government. So I moved into local government. It was the Kennett era, so it was about smaller government, consolidating councils, very interesting time. Most people were jumping out. Everything was being competitively tendered, and I thought, this is interesting. I'll go in there and have a look. So I actually went into the human services area, which included all the human services, family, youth, children's services, housing, aged care, etc. And I was in that role for about 5.5 years. That was tough because people were losing jobs, etc. But there were a lot of good things done during that time, actually. Maternal child health, opening up, visiting hours up, not just 9 to 5, but actually on the weekends, suiting people's lifestyles, so being a bit more customer focused. That was a good learning for me. I also, just when I was with state government, it was interesting to be in a government at a time when they were introducing legislation to look what that's like. So the act that governed all the disability services before the federal government came in, the Guardianship and Administration Act, the Public Advocate Act. So the state government in my day did things a bit more. They were on the ground and they were working with the providers. I'm not sure if that happens now, and it certainly doesn't happen at a federal level. So I learnt a lot. I learnt a hell of a lot during that time. Then I started getting on a couple of boards, a couple of advisory committees, things like that. I then moved and I worked at the Brotherhood of St Lawrence. And when I was in local government, I'd started to do an MBA. I did a research qual, and then I started to do an MBA, which I finished when I went to the Brotherhood of St Lawrence. When I went to the Brotherhood of St Lawrence, that is a Victoria-wide organisation, but it doesn't. It's research. It does action research, social action research. That's Australia-wide. That's international, actually. I moved into it was a kind of a hodgepodge. It was like disability, employment, aged care, human resources, and property management. So there you see, I was like,
Mix of four.
So that was interesting. And I was there for 9.5 years and spent quite a bit of time as acting CEO in different roles. But that was, in that time, I was involved in lots of boards, lots of government committees. So these are sorts of, I'm just pointing these out because these are sort of like leadership type roles. So lots of opportunities, lots of closures of things. There was a lot of reasons why we were doing that. And then I've been at Benetas for 16 years. And Brotherhood of St Lawrence is an Anglican organisation. It's affiliated with Anglicare Australia, as is Benetas. So that was sort of like within the same family. And I've been there for 6 years, and all I've seen is, since I've been there, I went there at a time of massive issues for Benetas. Benetas had 5 known deaths caused by salmonella, suspected salmonella poisoning, and they were publicly, they were in the media, not for the right reason. Everyone was coming after them, Quality and Safety Commission, the federal government, local government for the environmental health. It was like and it's a good business case. It's a case study of everything went wrong. A lot of the board members left. A lot of the senior staff left. This is what happens when these things happen. Good business case study for an MBA or Australian Institute of Company Directors about what, anyhow. I moved in that time, and after things, and I had my work cut out for me, but that was the challenge. We turned it around in a couple of years' time. Wow. Financially, of course, work cover was high. We were losing a lot of money, $8 million a year. It was like, I think at that time it was about $88 million. It's just under 300 million now, so, yeah.
Sitting and listening to you, one thing which is coming to my mind is you have the leadership of chaos, as in a managed chaos, wherever. So,
yes.
And I think that is
that's interesting.
That leadership is very dynamic, and that has to be very on the toe every time, all the time, on your game every time, all the time. You can't have 3 good years and then take a relaxed year one, and then mixing so many different elements of different varied business to coming together. What's your observation in terms of, just taking one example of that's Brotherhood of St. Lawrence, that you had varied divisions within the organization, and if you can explain that, the idea of the dynamic leadership, that you have to have so many things going in your head at the same time, and then looking longer term and short at the same time.
That's interesting. So first of all, this is where my psychology background came in. That was very helpful. Because you have to look at the dynamics, the organisational dynamics of the board and the leadership team, the executive, right? And who is the CEO? And the CEO changed 3 times when I was there. And then look at who your colleagues are around the table, and look at... so for me, what I saw was a lot of people that were not taking up not taking up their role. They were not being independent. They were running to the CEO quite a lot. And we're all in our silos. But I had 4 silos, and there was the one I knew the most was aged care and disability. The other 2 areas I had to learn a bit more, HR and maintenance, and property maintenance, property, etc. But and so I think, look, number one is, when I mentor people, I just say to them, you need to know who you are and where your strengths and weaknesses are, and where you think you might need assistance, not being afraid to ask for that. It comes from a number of years of actually trialling stuff and working out what's not going to go right, and not putting yourself down if it doesn't go right. I do a lot of self-talk. I give myself, that could have gone better, Sandra, or geez, you did a really good job of that, because you can't expect anybody to do that for you. Sometimes there are people in leadership who are waiting for somebody to pat them on the back, and the more senior you get to CEO's level, no one does that. You might have a chairman that doesn't do that. You might have a number of people that do that, but you actually are quite I think you have to be quite self-contained. Doesn't mean you can't ask for help. But you need to know yourself. If you don't know yourself, and for a leader, I'm about to go on a long break. Now, I haven't had a holiday for a while. When a leader says, I've got to have that break, I'm really burnt out, big red alarm signals go off for me, because why did you allow yourself to get like that? What were your points what were your signs and signals that were going to tell you that you actually need to have a break?
So you've been, that example of the unions, and there were not many women in that kind of an environment, and you were, in some scenarios you would be in the rooms of leadership rooms where are not many women in the room, and you have and how is that dynamic of, I don't want to see as just gender-based dynamics, but more in terms of negotiation, contracting, and then when you are negotiating in those rooms with people of high egos, and the dynamics just flip over, it's hit. So how do you manage those how have you managed with some examples in the past?
Yeah, well, obviously I've done all the courses on this and that, but there's nothing that does better than practice.
But as a young girl, as 20-year-old in the union room.
I mean, I observed. Observing is really useful. I learnt, you don't always talk first, you observe. I used to put my hand up to do things that I didn't really know much about, so I had a go. And I learnt that actually what's the worst thing that can happen? And when in a negotiation environment, it's like preparation. That was really important. But some of it you can't, you can over prepare, and some you can't prepare for. So then that's about how you stand on your feet, how you speak on your feet, and deferring to other people. I mean, I saw some the union movements have changed, but in those days, the thumping of the table and the bad behaviour from the boys was you just looked at it and thought, I'll grow up, Sort of Trump behaviour we see now. It's like, really? Haven't you grown up? That's not how you get things done. If you can demonstrate being able to do things a different way, or blend it, you don't have to pretend that you're Margaret Thatcher, because that didn't work very well. But I'm gonna be like a boy. I'm gonna be like a man. No, you don't. But I think a lot of the work that I do is behind the scenes. So it's not at the table. It's not what people see.
The prep leading up to.
Yes, it's the prep. It's the thinking through what everyone might be thinking, how they might respond, what they've got to lose, what they've got to win. I would never refer to something as win-lose. That is like talk about a deal killer. But doing a lot of
the art of the deal.
Yeah. Doing a lot of discussions behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Like, talking to different people and trying to influence them, or trying to see where they're coming from. And what you normally find is it's not as black and white as you think it is.
And I also strongly believe when you said the word observe. And when you observe the room long enough, observe your colleagues long enough, you know when they react, how they react, what they say and what they not say. And your apparent solution or advice is very, very commonsensical because you have known everybody. And then your solution is not over-engineered because you know everybody, and that's the logical thing to do. And it lands clearly well because everybody would agree or would support that. And transitioning from a union room of unions, which is a bit more thumping and strength,
table thumping,
and from there to within the board structures, and board is very heavy on governance, heavy on many of the boards will lean towards let's take the minimalistic risk, let's manage the risk. We have so much challenges. Let's not grow. How have you managed those conversations when you are the one who says no? We have made enough cash flow in this organization. Let's take the next round of growth for this conversation. How do you bring people all in the room who are probably not growth oriented?
Well, that's a long journey because a lot of for-purpose, not-for-profit organisations get most of their money from government, right? And some of it from people who use their services and from trusts and donations and things like that. So if you're in a position where you can look at utilising the money, but even then you need to do certain things to fulfil government agreements. But I think for me that's been a long, really probably the Brotherhood of Benetas and to a certain extent local government, but of course they get their money from ratepayers and from government anyhow. It is about, look, you've got to get your foundations right. You've got to be able to get the basics right, because then it doesn't matter if you start growing. It's going to be, and because aged care is so over-regulated, the compliance requirements and they just keep on getting harder. If you don't get that right, you're going to be in a world of pain, and you're going to be, your hard-earned money that profit you've made, you're going to be actually spending it to get people to come in to do the sort of reparation work, to get you back on your. So you need to get your structures right. You need to make sure that you get the right staff. And I've always said, getting in the right executive team and getting the right directors, particularly people in key roles like the chairperson, the person who chairs, the director who chairs financial audit and risk and quality and compliance is really important. So I think having the board trust you, and that's what I say to the executive, if we're not open and transparent and they find out that there's something we haven't told them, when we put up a business case and we are saying to them, trust us, we want you to invest $5 million in this new technology, business transformation, and then they find out we've left out serious, and they haven't done that. But we've seen plenty of business cases, haven't we, where in the media where that's happened, and there's been some sort of collusion between particular people on the board and the executive, whatever. One of the best things that we spend a lot of time on our risk profile and our risk register, and we do this, really spending time looking at what is the risk appetite of the directors. We're about to refresh that because we have some new directors, but also do it for the executive. And I think that's really important. A lot of time is spent from me preparing my exec team for preparing papers and taking them to the board. I always put my director hat on, even though I'm not an executive director, I'm a CEO, to try and think through their eyes what they would be thinking, because in all their professions and where they, and I look, we just don't write a paper. Somebody writes a paper and it goes off unchecked. There's a whole lot of assurance that happens. We've got very good governance. That's one of the outcomes of the Royal Commission. That's one of the things from the New Aged Care Act. A number of companies, just a small number, from what I understand, but they were found wanting, especially some of them that were privately owned. But some of the not-for-profits, because they're so small and they have people who are volunteers. Getting the right people on the board is important. I'm involved in that, as is the CFO, who is also the company secretary. The board is very interested in our views, so we would do a lot of that work. But it is a work in progress. It doesn't happen overnight. And having a chair and the relationship between the chair and the CEO is pretty crucial.
There's a bit of an evolution happening in aged care through the Royal Commission and what came out, and the Aged Care Act has been evolved. What kind of broader principles the Aged Care Act is reflecting upon? What are the learnings which have come from the Commission has been engaged within the Act? And what positives are we seeing or not?
I, at this point, would say that there's probably not a lot of positives, that it hasn't been done properly. And I could talk forever about that. I think it's been too quick. I don't think that, having a rights-based approach, which is a central principle to the new Act, I do not think the government officers, even the government, understand what that means. Because it's not reflected in the way the standards are enforced. And there's a whole lot of requirements government have to meet, which they're not meeting in regards to wait times. And you would have seen in the media about the wait times are just ballooned out. And then you find that there's 5 different classifications of wait times. It's crazy, depending on where you are in the process. So I think, but in terms of, there have been some benefits. I mean, like I've just said, there are some organisations where their governance was left wanting. And so goodness knows what reports the board got. There wasn't more diversity on the board. There wasn't people that had the clinical experience. And the board now need to, all directors need to assure themselves that there is evidence from management that actually shows that we meet these objectives, we meet these goals, we are compliant, not just we're telling you we are, we actually have to evidence it. So have people got the competencies that they need? Have you cited all these requirements from the associated providers, the subcontractors, all those sorts of things? I think the other things would be that although we had started doing this before the new Act, but looking at co-design with consumers, we actually started doing that a bit more during COVID actually. And consumer advisory committees, well, we'd always had that. I think they've, it's very hard when you've got thousands of consumers and family members to consult with them. Everybody's different. Ask 2 people about what the food was like in that facility and they can have opposing views. So what do you do with that? But I think it makes us be more creative about how we involve older people in giving feedback about our services. Just giving them surveys like the government expect every quarter, people are just going to go away. I'm over-surveyed, I'm exhausted, go away. But I think there is a lot more work to do, a lot more work. They've created a lot of, I think the government they've realised, we've told them, they've created a whole lot more compliance and work with that. It's got to be risk proportionate, doesn't it? What is the risk? And the action taken has to be proportionate. And there was an article in Australian Institute of Company Directors a few months ago which showed that of the OECD countries, Australia rated very highly in regards to our risk taking and our compliance, and that it wasn't proportionate. And I think that is costing us a lot of money, and government would say, or opposition government would say, that is stopping us from actually growing and investing and being more productive.
Some terms have been overused and they lose their meaning. Like in management language, the word innovation has lost the meaning, and similarly in the care space, the word of person-centered approach.
Oh yeah, yep.
So, but I think that's a very strong principle to be having at the center of anything what you do. But how has that been bastardized or not been used to the intent of the word rather than just it has lost its meaning when all organizations talk about person-centered approach, including government, in the policy papers or in their legislation or in their procedures. It has lost the meaning, or does it kept the meaning? What do you think?
When in 2017, consumer-directed care came into community care packages. And that was interesting because that was kind of the first in aged care of any consumer, any person-directed care. But because I came from the disability sector, that was already there. Yeah. And so disability, for me, when I came to aged care, I thought, this is backward, right? This is backward. It was very medicalised. Why was it so medicalised? Still is. That's a topic for another day. And so the disability sector, I think, had a stronger focus on that than what we ever did in aged care, definitely. And so, but how it plays out is that it is about. So there's a whole lot of things that we've basically always done, but maybe not to the right standard and not consistently, right? So people are aware of their rights. There's a code of conduct, and staff are aware of that. That people are receiving information in a way that they can understand. So that obviously talks to the language issues and cultural issues. People and also plain language, not what like we've got we've used AI to help us explain when people go through their client agreements, if they're going into residential care, for example. When you got this form, there's lots of pages. You wish you'd actually had all the information you needed before you start. It actually explains paragraph by paragraph what you need and what you need before you complete this page and what each paragraph means, right? So people, because it needs to be plain English, right? Issues around seeking people's feedback, asking them so people can make an informed decision, giving them the information, asking for their feedback, asking for them to participate in any decision about their lives, what services they'll receive, all that sort of stuff. And then if there's been a mistake, so if there's a grievance, how the grievance is managed, that's an area that we've definitely tightened up. The software that we use, how we train people, and if there has been something that's happened, the use of open disclosure, which hospitals have used for a long time, and we've started to do that. So that's about bringing all the parties together and saying, look, this is where we could have done better, and this is what we've done about it, and actually acknowledging the other party. And that involves quite a lot of training of staff. Seeking feedback about services, I've spoken about that. That when you talk about and not, we would, well, I'd be very upset if this had ever happened. But one of the issues consumers would say we haven't said anything about something that's gone wrong because we don't want to be, we don't want anything bad to happen to us. And so making sure that that staff are aware about some of the consequences, how they need to deal with people when they make complaints, and reassuring older people and their families about that. So we certainly have made some improvements, but it wasn't ground zero. We weren't starting from scratch.
And what's the broader understanding within the sector of that, where the sector is going in terms of that's the leadership? Is it a leadership challenge, not just within organizations, but broadly from the sector, to take it to steer the ship in the right direction? And are we moving there? Because the politicians and ministers will play the room, whichever the room they are in, whether shadow or leading ministers. And how do you see that fine balance of leadership taking a stronger role and putting the foot down that this is what we need and this is the sector needs and this is where we have to go? We can't be just knocking around the main point, the main issues which have come through Aged Care Royal Commission, which have come to so many reviews within the states as well.
That is a very interesting question, and it's one that government have never done well, but it's not just government's role. And this is one of the issues. So our peak body for providers, aged care providers, Age in Australia, they've commissioned some research, and some of us have been invited to be involved, and they put something out recently. And it's called Continuity of Ageing, and it's looking at where we might be in 50-50, in 2050. Now, government has never put anything out that talks about that. We've had Mark Butler's, Living Longer, Living Better. He wrote a book, whatever. We've had the intergenerational reports, which look at other areas. But the government any government has been accused of not having a long-term vision for aged care. That should be shaped, though, by I think everybody, really. Everybody has a stake in it. Yeah. At the moment, if you asked how many aged care providers had a strategic plan that might look 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead, I would say that many of them don't. We have a Best Life 2030, and we've always had one since I've been at Benetas, but many people don't. And that drives what we do. We've got a whole yearly planner in terms of how big we want to be, how many innovations, what we want to plan, all that sort of stuff. We've got all that there. There's some of the media in aged care are very good at pushing, like DCM Do Come Monday, very good at sort of putting stuff out there, and I'm putting stuff out there and saying, well, why aren't the not-for-profits getting into housing? It's a bit of play, it's a bit of sort of teasing us, or getting us to respond. There's a whole lot of reasons, by the way, and if you have the chance, you'll tell them. But they try and be the provocateur, I think. Their role seems to change, whereas the other aged care media tend not to do that. State governments have also had a finger in the pie in aged care, more so in Victoria. Victoria is unique to every other state in that we have 5,000 publicly funded, state-funded aged care beds. And they're normally attached to hospitals, and a lot of them in rural areas, or they're attached to big hospitals in the metro area. And that's why we are currently not in the same situation as the rest of the state, the rest of the country, in regards to older people being stuck in hospital beds, which you would be well aware of. So I think that, and also too, ageing is an area where people don't want to think about it. They don't want to think about it, and so they don't want to engage in it. So Benetas have just released some research a few weeks ago. I've done quite a lot of media on it, and it's called Ageing in Place, an Australian Perspective. It's on our website. There's a white paper, there's an infograph which explains a lot on a page in diagrams, and then there's a sort of a short summary. But what it shows is that 9 out of 10 people want to age at home, but only about 9% are prepared. And we've developed up this Aging in Place Readiness Index, which we're going to use every 2 years.
Nice.
And it's in five categories.
Yeah.
And it's got things like preparedness, awareness, technology, 5 areas. And the white paper actually speaks to government, but it speaks to older people. And a lot of the work has to be done by older people. And a lot of it is about early intervention. You know, the Danish people, when you turn 50 or 55, you have a living long, living better, or whatever plan they call it. I'm making that up.
Yeah.
But it's a plan that you face into aging. And you look at all the things, and it's about your home, it's about your job, it's about your family, preparing. It's a whole health and well-being. It's everything. It's not just about your superannuation, for heaven's sake. And they can choose not to do it. We do it at the other end. When you turn 75 or 70 or something, you can have this comprehensive health plan, which is paid for by Medicare, free. But it's like, what's the use of doing it when you're 70, 75? You know?
Yeah.
This needs to be a prevention. So I'm mentioning it because I think it is part of, we don't have the conversations. You know, we have some councils have positive ageing plans. We just don't do anything about it. We don't until somebody has a fall or something happens, somebody's diagnosed with early onset dementia, you know, and then it's like, oh, and we, as providers, we get to deal with that. And people haven't prepared. They haven't got their power of attorneys ready. They haven't got their advanced care, advanced life care plans, you know, care directives. And so I think it's just not something we want to talk about. And that's why it's not done. We don't actually like to look at that.
And as you said in this opening of the answer, that media try to do DCM and oversimplify, and then there are difficult arguments to be presented. There are long form answers to be given on just housing, and media and politicians or ministers like oversimplification of a complex problem into few lines and few statements.
Yeah, that's right.
And which can be easily repeated. It can land well. Year 5 English language, that has to be simplified to that standard because that's the messaging in politics. That's how it works and that's how it operates. And you have to be oversimplifying. But that principle of oversimplifying. But these situations and problems or challenges are overly complex, and there's so many actors in this at play. So how might we, as in public sphere, might we create a space to have these complex, difficult conversations openly, and then give it at the right time to explore and expand? Because if you're trying to oversimplify, hence the act has been pushed so quickly, so fast, without understanding the whole breadth of the complexity.
There are many actors, and that is a blessing and a curse, actually, because there are other actors that I haven't talked about, which are the people who are the consumer groups, OPAN, Council on the Aging, National Seniors. Then you've got the people who are seen as, we call them the professionals, but they're sort of like everybody that works around the aged care industry, but they need it, like people that work in allied health, the doctors, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole lot of people that work around the system who we need, exercise physiologists, et cetera, and they've all got opinions. And every time government makes a policy decision, they will consult with everybody, but it's never gonna, not everyone's going to be happy with the decisions. And I think there's a group that I'm on called the National Aged Care Alliance, and it is made up of all these groups. In fact, we met down at Docklands at one of the hotels here a few weeks ago. And people it has also a lot of Indigenous groups and church and charitable groups and people representing different ethnic groups, and the LGBTIQ community, etc. So it's very diverse. So we try to look at the middle ground and what we are and what we can agree on. If we put the older person at the centre of what we do, and then we ask the question, why are we doing that? You know, why are we doing that? What does that do to that person there? So I think having the conversation is about getting those groups together, but government officers, the federal government come and talk to this national alliance. Government ministers and opposition come to talk as well. But as you say, one sentence, a simple solution. This is why we did that infographic, because I sent this research we did off to everybody.
Yeah.
And now I'm doing a whole lot of media. But they look at it, and I think what you have to do is eat the elephant one piece at a time.
Yeah.
So that's what we will be doing. I had conversations with Council on the Ageing CEO yesterday, and what we could do, there is we have to look at a handful of really easy things that we can do. So what if we actually got that survey that went out to 2,500 people in Australia to look at measure their readiness for ageing in place? What if we actually constructed that so that it was really short, like maybe 5 or 6 questions, but it would give you what you needed for the older person. They could go online and do it, and then they could get in responses to how ready they were using these categories. But then there's a whole lot of information in the background where they can go if they want more information. Because there is lots of information out there on people's websites. The government is funded, various trusts are funded. People don't know where it is, right? And so that's a simple, and it could be promoted by Council on the Ageing, for example. So that's something that anybody of any age could go in, and then there's some information about what they can do. That's a really easy example. But otherwise, if you look at the whole thing, you'll never get started. So it's the groundswell we want. It's who we're targeting. We're targeting the families. Because if you're looking at residential care, it's normally the families that you're dealing with. It's not the older person. It might be, but quite often it's not. Home care is different, because home care, one of the biggest issues the research found was that people, they won't, not accepting help is a real issue, and that is what stops them from receiving help, which means then they may have to go into care. So reframing it. What about you want to maintain your independence? So through accepting some sort of support will keep you at home and independent. It's like if you look at the alternatives, so what, because you can't expect unpaid carers, family and friends to provide everything. It's not working. It's a balance of everything. You actually need some informal care from family and friends, and you need to get some from government and maybe pay for some yourself.
Talking about chewing the elephant one bite at a time. And you're right, it's magnanimous.
Sorry to reference an elephant. I know it's a sacred animal.
But still, I think it talks about the magnanimity of
it's huge.
The challenge. And typically it's talked about that, then it's not and the sector is still waiting for the avalanche to come, which is 2030. Of when the
tsunami. Haven't we heard about that?
So we haven't yet prepared for that. We're just still delivering on what was past, and we are not preparing for the avalanche which is coming to us. That the large population will walk into the door of and want to receive aged care services in different formats in different parts of the state and the country. How well are we prepared? And what are the things to be done if we are not?
Well, when you look at what's provided overseas, Australia is actually doing fairly well. So it's easy to just go, we're not doing well. I've done a whole lot of different trips around the place. I haven't studied in every country, obviously. But when you compare it to the people we normally get compared to, we're doing really well. In this country, if you had no money, or you existed only on the pension, and you had no savings, there would be a residential aged care bed for you. It may not be, it will be at a certain standard because that's regulated by Government Quality and Safety Commission. It may not be near where you want to be or your family, so they can visit you, but there will be something for you, right? There's not many countries where they can say that, right? Now, whether or not you want that is another thing. If you don't have a stable home, that's a worry. There's the first issue. There's an ever-increasing number of older women, particularly, who don't have secure housing. My company, Benetas, we actually opened up, rebuilt 35 units last year up in Bendigo of affordable housing, mainly for older women, but not all older women. And there's a huge need. We also have some other housing in the Gisborne area. So that's a big issue. I think the aging in place, the reason why we did the research is because our hypothesis was that people weren't prepared, and it was proven to be correct in lots and lots of ways. But there are lots of things that people can do in terms of government could do a lot more about promoting their services in easy to use language.
Yeah.
We've got a big customer centre, and I say to government officials, we're just doing your job for you, but you're not paying us. We've actually got this big we have a lot of staff who take calls from people because they've been into the My Aged Care website and they see us, they come and they call us because that's our 1-800 number or 1-300 number, and we are spending longer, we're getting more calls and we're spending longer on the phone with those people because government just has this, they have very, you can speak to someone, but they've reduced all that because that costs money. And some people do, a lot of people, it's complex. And they're asking more questions, and now there's the co-payments for some people. They will ask more questions and they'll shop around, which is their right, user rights.
Yeah.
But it's been pushed onto us. I think having facilities where people are able to return from hospital quicker and be provided with that care. We need to upskill our nursing staff more. I mean, Pauline Hanson, I hope you're listening, but without people from the Indian, Chinese and Filipino and South African communities, Australia would be staffed. We've got we wouldn't have the nurses. We wouldn't have the care staff, They make up a big bulk of our staff, right? And they are great people to have. And there are obviously some Australians as well. But staffing, getting the right staff and giving them career paths and paying them properly is a huge challenge because we compete with the hospitals.
Yeah.
And they're very unionised and they get paid more, So you go and check, you choose where you want to work. I think residential aged care people aren't building enough, and government are really not happy about that. They released an independent study from an independent body recently, and it makes a whole lot of recommendations. Some of the things they picked up in the budget, but some of the things, and they're mainly focused on people who are supported or concessional people on low income. But some of the initiatives don't kick in for a few years, but they're trying to get people to build more facilities and to upgrade or expand the existing facilities, because I think they talked about there needs to be 10,600 new beds for the next 20 years, and last year I think only 800 were built. We are behind time. But why aren't we building? Because it's too expensive. We're not getting the money we need. And you need a margin. There does seem to be this issue about the government not understanding about a margin, and also not just for resi but for home care. As we say in the for purpose section, no mission without margin. You can't make nothing. You can't be in deficit every year, and a lot of organisations they make operational deficits, which is not good. And that's why they're not investing in buildings. So, and it takes 3 years minimum to actually stand up a facility of say 100 people. Planning processes, building, tendering, commissioning. It's huge. So you just can't click your fingers and get one.
The election's coming up in Victoria in November this year.
Yes.
What are the bigger issues of elderly Victorians should be on the table, and for both or 3 or 4 sides of politics to talk to and address them, and if they can bring in some policy standards or policy opinions in those areas?
I think that affordable housing for older people in suitable environments, because obviously there's a built design that is more desirable in communities, would be one, certainly. I think the issues that are national are the same in Victoria. I mean, I've just told you about the 5,000 public health beds, but the issue's going to come to Victoria soon. So making sure that we have adequate services for people who need palliative care, who need specialist dementia care services, and that they're properly funded, and we can get adequate staff, that people can choose, that we actually have the service, the staff with the adequate qualifications and supports to actually only send those people to hospital that actually need to go to hospital. It is not a home-like environment for them. The people in the hospital are not trained. They don't have the time, and they're not trained. And so they would be better off to stay at home, stay in their home. It's their home, or if it's in their residential, if they're in their own home, or retirement living. Retirement living, I just refer to that as their home. But if they do have to go in, that they're there for a minimal time, and then they get the care they needed, and then they can return back home. That we have the staffing. Okay, so the Productivity Commission did a report, put it out recommendations at the end of last year, focus on the care economy. They made 3 recommendations about the care economy. One was around collective commissioning, which we're involved in one of those projects in Gippsland. That's about bringing everyone together and across all the organisations, mental health, disability, acute health, aged care. So we're on that group. But they're looking at a disability aged care initiative. Not sure if that's going to be for us. Looking at compliance and bringing across everyone from the care community and streamlining the compliance. One of the reasons we got out of NDIS providing accommodation services is because we were just having to duplicate everything. And so we've applied to get out of it. Most of our people that are with us, they want to stay with us, which is fine. Otherwise, they would have to move. And the other one is, I can't remember what the third one is. I think it's about staff qualifications and sharing staff and things like that. But those sort of things. Why can't we get that together? We've got the primary healthcare initiative, networks and things like that. But they are of variable quality. Nobody knows many of them, who they are, what they're doing. They've got all sorts of fantastic initiatives. I mean, telehealth. Some of them are funded equipment. We've got some of it, but you've got to have the follow-up and the staff who can use it, So there's so many opportunities. Technology. I mean, we pay for all of our technology. There's so much more we can do. I think the government would be better off you've got me thinking, with the election coming at the end of November, there are some initiatives that I perhaps could focus on. The Aging in Place research, focus on state government. Actually speaking to state government about that. But they've got out of services now. All of the services that they used to provide have gone to the federal government. So they aren't really responsible for that anymore. So we need to be a bit careful about how we do that. But still, they are responsible for older Victorians. But a lot of that, discrimination, positive ageing are some of their areas. Cyber security. So we've done some research in that area. We've got to focus on the areas that are right for them. But they could advocate stronger to the federal government also. I'm not going to let them off the hook.
Yes, very much. In conclusion, if you can share the best leadership lesson you have learned, or somebody's given you that advice on?
Look, one of the things I've learned in the passage of time is being patient with once you've got everything in place and you've actually done all you can do. Sometimes it's better if you sit and wait. It doesn't because things move. Like when you're younger and less experienced, you want to get everything done. But what I've learned is that, and this is from people showing me a different way, is that there are, with the movements of time, and if you believe in fate, I think that people move positions, or they change their opinions. They may or may not have been influenced by you, maybe by something else. The environment changes in your company, and also the external environment changes. Like, look what's happened in the last 6 months in the world, right? And so when you look to see, look at Keir Starmer. He was the poster boy two years ago, and now, so. Yeah, but at least we're in there's a country, as is Australia, where people know when to go. They value their democracy, and he wasn't the right person for the job for a whole lot of reasons, but he's honourable, right? And unlike Some other people we could say, well, there you go. But that is a lesson in itself, because not being seen to be doing something doesn't mean you're not doing anything. And I think that's a lesson that only an older person could say, because I think when you're younger, I've got to do everything. Well, you've done. It doesn't mean sitting back and waiting for the stars and the moon to align, but I think sometimes you have to think about. Things are, at the moment, we're looking at a new enterprise operating model, but it dawned on me that we needed to look at the operating models for each of the business arms first. That would inform the overall model. And it's messy, but I don't mind mess. But not everybody likes mess. Some people like to know, well, that just looks like I don't have a job.
The leadership of chaos.
Leadership of chaos. I go, well, no, come on board. Influence what you want. I'm not saying don't do that, but personalities are that not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody wants that, do they? They want to know, no, I want to know where my place is in the world. Well, that's not always possible. And that's not what you expect from general managers, is it? You expect them to live with a bit of chaos.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandra.
My pleasure.